Nearly 4,600 sailors get to wake up, work, and live in one of the most technologically advanced, expensive places on Earth. The USS Gerald R is a floating city where thousands of people are operating inside a $13 billion warship. It's like the world's most exclusive company town, and only a select few ever get to experience it. But it's definitely not like any town you've ever seen. In fact, this isn't just another aircraft carrier. The Gerald R is the most expensive warship ever built in human history. At 1,092 feet long and displacing over 100,000 tons, it's longer than the Chrysler Building is tall and heavier than 400 Statues of Liberty combined. This floating fortress costs more than the GDP of 50 countries. And somewhere in the Atlantic or Pacific Ocean right now, thousands of sailors are going about their daily routines inside this technological marvel. But here's the thing. Despite all that cutting-edge technology, despite the electromagnetic catapults and advanced nuclear reactors, the real story of the USS Gerald R isn't about weapon systems or engineering specs. It's about the people who call this place home. Because when you're living on a ship that can launch aircraft at 150 miles per hour every 45 seconds, when you're surrounded by enough explosive ordnance to level a small city, when you're spending months at sea without touching land, the mundane becomes extraordinary. The physical space. Picture the biggest kitchen you've ever seen. Now imagine it needs to feed an entire town, 3 times a day, every single day. That's the reality aboard the USS Gerald R where the 2 conglomerate galleys aren't just kitchens. They're food production facilities operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Unlike the Nimitz class carriers with 5 separate galleys, the Ford operates just 2 highly advanced conglomerate galleys. 1 aft galley that runs continuously and 1 forward galley that operates when the air wing is embarked. This centralized design is more efficient, but means every square inch must be meticulously organized because there's no room for inefficiency. You've got industrial ovens equipped with Wi-Fi monitoring and touchscreen controls, walk-in refrigerators positioned directly below the galleys for easier access, and prep stations where culinary specialists work shoulder to shoulder preparing meals at an industrial scale. The crew mess areas can accommodate the rotation needed to feed nearly 4,000 personnel during peak operations. The serving line moves with assembly line precision. Tray, main course, sides, beverage, dessert. The whole process takes about 15 minutes per person when things are running smoothly. The Ford's food service division has roughly 90 fewer sailors than a Nimitz-class carrier, but feeds the same sized crew and air wing. That's because they're not just making meals, they're producing approximately 18,000 meals per day. Breakfast starts at 600 hours. Lunch begins at 1100. Dinner runs from 1700 to 1900. And then there's midrats, midnight rations, for the night shift workers who need sustenance at 0200 hours. 4 full meal periods every single day without fail. The numbers are staggering. 1,600 pounds of meat prepared daily, 350 pounds of lettuce, 160 gallons of milk, 30 cases of cereal, and 20,000 cups of coffee. The onboard bakery produces up to 1,000 loaves of bread each day. Daily food costs range from $45,000 to $65,000, over $1 million per month in groceries alone. The equipment includes self-cleaning convection ovens that function like industrial-grade pressure cookers with programmable menus, automated dishwashing systems, and specialized food storage elevators that move supplies directly from centralized storerooms. Everything is stainless steel for easy cleaning and corrosion resistance. It may be cramped, but this galley operation runs with precision that would impress any high-volume restaurant operation. The human element and purpose. And yes, space is limited, but that doesn't mean quality suffers. In fact, the food aboard the USS Gerald R is remarkably good, far better than the freeze-dried rations or tasteless slop that most people imagine when they think of military food. That's because the Navy understands something fundamental. When you're asking sailors to spend 6 to 9 months away from home, when they're working 12-hour shifts in demanding conditions, when they're separated from everything familiar, food becomes more than just fuel. it becomes morale. The culinary specialists aboard the Ford know they're feeding morale, not just feeding bodies. They take genuine pride in their work, experimenting with recipes, celebrating holidays with special menus, and accommodating dietary restrictions and religious requirements. Fresh strawberries lasting beyond 2 weeks at sea, green salad still available on day 28. These aren't luxuries. They're achievements made possible by advanced food storage systems. Senior Chief Culinary Specialist Marcus Thompson has been serving aboard carriers for 15 years. He explains it like this: people think we're just heating up pre-made food, but that couldn't be further from the truth. We're cooking from scratch as much as possible. We're baking bread every morning. We're seasoning and roasting real cuts of meat. We're making soups and sauces from base ingredients. It takes more work, sure, but when a 19-year-old sailor tells me this is the best meal he's had in months, that's what makes it worthwhile. We're creating moments of comfort and normalcy in a very abnormal environment. That matters more than people realize. A typical day for a culinary specialist starts at 0400 hours. They're prepping breakfast while most of the ship is still asleep. By 0530, they're firing up the equipment and getting the serving line ready. After the breakfast rush ends around 900, there's maybe an hour of cleanup before lunch prep begins. Then comes lunch service, cleanup, dinner prep, dinner service, cleanup again, and finally, mid-rats preparation. It's physically demanding work in a hot environment, standing for hours at a time, moving quickly between stations, coordinating with teammates to ensure everything comes together simultaneously. But here's what makes it special. The mess deck isn't just where people eat. It's where the ship comes together. In a floating city of nearly 4,600 people, the mess deck is the great equalizer. Everyone eats the same meals. The admiral sits in the same space as the newest recruit fresh out of boot camp. Officers and enlisted personnel line up at the same serving line. This is where friendships form, where different divisions meet and mix, where the isolation of shipboard life breaks down for a moment. This is where laughter happens, stories are shared, and the crew bonds over a common experience. Whether you work in the reactor room, on the flight deck, in engineering, or in communications, you all end up here, eating the same food, taking the same brief respite from your duties. The mess deck is the social heart of the ship. But then you zoom out and remember the context. These sailors don't have personal rooms to retreat to. Most are hot racking, sharing bunks with personnel on opposite shifts, so the bed is never truly yours. Internet access is extremely limited. You can't just call home whenever you want. You're in a metal vessel floating on an ocean, and the only people you see for months are the same faces every single day. It's a very tight community where everyone knows each other, where privacy is a luxury, where your whole world shrinks down to this one ship. This makes you realize it really takes a special kind of person to thrive in this environment. The technical challenges. But here comes the tricky part. Keeping nearly 4,000 people fed for months at sea requires solving logistical puzzles that most people never consider. Aircraft carriers aren't built to be as big as possible. They're built to be as effective as possible. And that means every cubic foot of space is already spoken for. Aircraft, weapons, fuel, parts, electronics, crew quarters, operation centers. Storage for food and supplies has to compete with everything else. When the Ford deploys, the ship typically loads enough food to sustain the crew for 45 to 90 days before requiring resupply. The largest dining area can hold enough food for 1,600 personnel for more than 45 days. Average stocks include 66,000 sausages, 28,800 rashers of bacon, 12,000 tins of beans, and 64,800 eggs. Packing supplies is like a high-stakes game of Tetris, where every wrong move costs you valuable capacity. The Ford's innovative design places food storage directly below the centralized galleys along the ship's center line, allowing more direct access and decreasing staffing levels needed to break down and store supplies. The ship has 10 programmable stores elevators positioned over centralized storerooms on various levels, allowing transfer of food and supplies directly into appropriate storerooms. That's why supply specialists spend days before deployment carefully planning the loadout. They have to calculate consumption rates for every item. They have to account for the fact that fresh produce spoils first. So you're eating salads in week 1, but more canned vegetables by week 6. They have to rotate stock so nothing expires. And they have to do all this while maximizing space utilization, because there's no room for inefficiency. The timeline is unforgiving. Fresh milk lasts about 2 weeks, even refrigerated. Fresh fruits and vegetables start degrading within the first month, though the Ford's advanced storage systems extend this significantly. Frozen foods can last the entire deployment if properly stored. That's why menus evolve over the course of a deployment. By month 2 or 3, the menu relies more heavily on shelf-stable and frozen items, though resupply operations, called UNREPs, or underway replenishments, bring in fresh supplies when possible. During a May 2020 replenishment at sea, a crew of just 18 on the flight deck unloaded 143 food pallets in about 2 hours, far more efficient than the 50 to 100 sailors typically required on other ships. Supply ships pull alongside the carrier and match speed before transferring 400,000 to 700,000 pounds of food via cable every 7 to 10 days when on extended deployment. But the supply chain challenge is just one of many obstacles. The galley environment itself presents unique problems. Imagine cooking in a kitchen that rocks and sways, not gently, violently when seas are rough. Equipment must be secured. Liquids slosh. Hot surfaces become hazards. Everything that can move must be locked down or it becomes a projectile. Heat and ventilation pose another challenge. Industrial equipment running continuously generates tremendous heat. The galley can easily reach uncomfortable temperatures, even with ventilation systems running. Culinary specialists work in these conditions for hours, staying hydrated, pushing through the physical demands. The equipment is specialized for shipboard use. Modern ovens have self-cleaning cycles and Wi-Fi monitoring. Tables have raised edges to prevent items from sliding off. Everything is designed for corrosion resistance and efficiency. Safety features are built into every system because in a confined space on a ship at sea, accidents can escalate quickly. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen, the food service officer, validates these challenges. People don't realize the complexity of what we're doing here. We're not just running a cafeteria. We're managing a supply chain that can't be easily replenished. We're cooking in an environment that's constantly moving. We're maintaining health and safety standards that would make a land-based health inspector proud. And we're doing it all while the ship is conducting combat operations or training exercises. Our team has to be adaptable, resilient, and incredibly well-trained. When the ship goes to general quarters and everyone rushes to battle stations, we're still ensuring that when the crew stands down, there's a hot meal waiting. That level of operational continuity requires serious planning and dedication. Without the right setup, food service would collapse within days. But the challenges facing culinary specialists are just the beginning of understanding what makes life aboard the Ford so unique and demanding: the stakes and danger. And here's where it gets serious. Fire is one of the worst emergencies any ship's crew can face, and kitchens are inherently high-risk environments. Hot equipment, electrical systems, all operating in close quarters, the potential for disaster is real. That's because on a ship, there's no calling the fire department. There's no evacuating to safety. The crew has to handle every emergency themselves. The Navy takes fire prevention seriously. Modern galleys use all-electric equipment whenever possible to eliminate open flames. Advanced ovens have automatic safety systems. Fire suppression systems are built into the spaces. The entire galley area is equipped with fire extinguishers, fire blankets, and automated systems. Every culinary specialist is trained in firefighting as part of basic damage control. If something goes wrong, if equipment malfunctions, if any kind of emergency threatens the ship, the crew has to fix it on their own. They are far from help with no immediate backup. And once the Ford deploys, they're pretty much on their own. The ship operates with complete self-sufficiency for months at a time. When conducting operations, the Ford can be anywhere in the world's oceans. It might be in the Mediterranean Sea, the Persian Gulf, the South China Sea, or the Western Pacific. The ship maintains operational security, meaning its exact location is often classified. That isolation is strategic. It's what makes carriers powerful, but it also means vulnerability. If something catastrophic happens, rescue isn't minutes away. It could be hours or days before help arrives. This is why the crew size is substantial. The Ford carries approximately 2,600 ship's company personnel who operate the vessel itself, plus another 1,900 to 2,000 air wing personnel who maintain and fly the aircraft. That's roughly 4,500 to 4,600 people total, and every single one of them has multiple qualifications. Culinary specialists aren't just cooks. They're firefighters. They're trained in damage control. They're qualified to handle emergencies. They know how to seal hatches and maintain watertight integrity. The same principle applies across every department. Alone in the ocean with no fresh air beyond what the ventilation systems provide, no daylight in most interior spaces, no quick supply runs to fix shortages, just thousands of sailors locked inside a floating city, equipped to handle anything that comes their way. The ship carries repair parts, medical facilities capable of handling major surgery, machine shops that can fabricate replacement components. Self-sufficiency isn't optional, it's survival. Petty Officer First Class James Rodriguez, who's served on 3 carrier deployments, puts it this way. The thing about being on a carrier is you realize how much you depend on your shipmates. If something breaks, we fix it together. If there's an emergency, we handle it together. There's this incredible sense of teamwork and camaraderie because we all know we're in this together. You trust the person next to you with your life, and they trust you with theirs. That bond is something you can't really explain to someone who hasn't lived it. This is just one of the reasons the USS Gerald R. Ford represents such an extraordinary achievement. The comparison and context. But these modern supercarriers carry much more than just aircraft and sailors. They carry the legacy of decades of naval aviation evolution, and understanding what makes the Ford special requires looking at what came before and what exists elsewhere. The advantage. The Gerald R. Ford is the first of a new class of carriers designed to replace the Nimitz-class ships that have served since 1975. And the differences are dramatic. Power is never a problem on the Ford because it's driven by 2 A1B nuclear reactors that generate approximately 250 megawatts of electrical power total, enough to power a city of 100,000 people. These reactors will run for 50 years without refueling, providing virtually unlimited range and endurance. This abundant power enables capabilities that previous carriers could only dream about. The Ford features electromagnetic aircraft launch systems, EMALS, instead of the steam catapults used on Nimitz-class ships. EMALS can launch heavier aircraft more smoothly, reducing stress on airframes and expanding the types of aircraft that can operate from the deck. The advanced arresting gear system uses computer-controlled motors instead of hydraulics to catch landing aircraft, providing more precise control and reducing maintenance. The Ford can generate and launch aircraft at a higher tempo than any previous carrier. It's designed to surge to 160 sorties per day compared to 120 on a Nimitz-class ship, a 33% increase in combat power. The ship's 11 advanced weapons elevators use electromagnetic motors to move ordnance from magazines to the flight deck in seconds, eliminating the slow, labor-intensive process of manually hauling bombs and missiles. Crew efficiency is dramatically improved. The Ford requires only 2,600 ship's company personnel compared to 3,200 on a Nimitz-class carrier. That's 600 fewer sailors needed to operate a more capable ship. The reduced crew size translates to lower operating costs, less demand on berthing and food services, and improved quality of life because there's actually more space per person despite the ship being roughly the same size. The island. The superstructure rising above the flight deck is smaller and positioned further aft, creating more deck space for aircraft operations. The dual-band radar system provides better detection and tracking of threats. The ship's electric distribution system is more efficient and resilient. Everything about the Ford is designed around efficiency and increased capability. The alternative, but not every Navy operates ships like the Gerald R. Ford. Most countries can't afford the $13 billion price tag or the extensive support infrastructure required. Even close allies of the United States operate smaller, differently configured carriers that make different trade-offs. The HMS Queen Elizabeth, Britain's newest carrier, displaces 65,000 tons compared to the Ford's 100,000 tons. It's 932 feet long versus the Ford's 1,092 feet. The Queen Elizabeth uses a ski jump ramp for launching aircraft instead of catapults, which limits it to operating STOVL, short takeoff, vertical landing aircraft like the F-35B. It can't launch conventional fighters, heavy strike aircraft, or airborne early warning planes with the same capability as the Ford. The Queen Elizabeth operates with a crew of approximately 700, expandable to 1,600 when the full air wing and embarked Marines are aboard, significantly smaller than the Ford's complement. The ship uses integrated electric propulsion with two Rolls-Royce MT-30 gas turbines, 36 megawatts each, and 4 diesel generators rather than nuclear power. France's Charles de Gaulle is the only nuclear-powered carrier outside the U.S. Navy, but it displaces just 42,500 tons and carries only 40 aircraft compared to the Ford's 75+. It has conventional steam catapults, not electromagnetic systems. Its smaller size means reduced endurance, fewer aircraft, and less operational flexibility. A conventional carrier is constantly managing trade-offs between speed, range, and endurance that nuclear carriers never face. Conventional ships burn fuel oil, and burn it fast. At high speed, fuel consumption can be substantial. That fuel takes up enormous storage space and limits how long the ship can operate before requiring replenishment. The numbers. The operational differences are striking. A U.S. Navy supercarrier has a virtually unlimited operational range. The Ford can steam at over 30 knots for as long as needed without refueling the reactors. It could theoretically circumnavigate the globe multiple times without stopping. The only limits are food supplies, crew endurance, and mechanical maintenance needs. For comparison, HMS Queen Elizabeth has a range of approximately 10,000 nautical miles at economical speed. The power generation difference is equally dramatic. The Ford generates 250 megawatts of electrical power compared to about 109 megawatts total propulsive power for the Queen Elizabeth. That extra power enables the EMEL system, advanced radar, directed energy weapon systems being developed for future installation, and the ability to add new capabilities without replacing the entire power infrastructure. Crew comfort factors in too. The Ford has air conditioning throughout the ship, powered by that abundant nuclear-generated electricity. Fresh water isn't a concern because the ship's desalination plants can produce over 400,000 gallons daily. Conventional carriers must carefully manage both power generation and fresh water production, balancing operational needs against crew comfort. But even with all these advantages, there's one real limit that affects every carrier, nuclear or conventional: the human factor. The human resolution, because here's the reality. Operating the USS Gerald R. Ford costs approximately $2.5 billion per year when you factor in crew salaries, maintenance, supplies, and the support infrastructure required. The ship requires a dedicated naval station with specialized facilities. It needs a trained crew that represents hundreds of millions of dollars in training investment. It demands constant maintenance during port periods to remain operational. And despite all that cutting-edge technology, despite the electromagnetic catapults and advanced reactors and automated systems, the Ford still has one surprising weakness. It's only as effective as the people operating it. Technology can fail. Automation can malfunction. When that happens, it's sailors with training, dedication, and improvisation skills who keep the ship running. Life inside an aircraft carrier is a way of life most people can't even imagine. It's all about endurance, discipline, and teamwork, because no one person can operate a ship this complex. The reactor technicians keeping the power flowing depend on the machinists maintaining the systems, who depend on the electricians maintaining the distribution networks, who depend on the damage controlmen maintaining safety systems, and all of them depend on the culinary specialists keeping everyone fed. Let's return to where we started. The galleys, the mess deck, those 18,000 meals served daily. It's more than just feeding people. It's creating moments of normalcy and comfort in an environment that's anything but normal. It's building community among thousands of people who might come from different backgrounds, different states, different life experiences, but who share this extraordinary existence for months at a time. It really takes a special kind of person to call this machine home. To wake up in a rack stacked 3 high, to work 12-hour shifts in demanding conditions, to go months without seeing family, to accept that your entire world is this ship and these shipmates. But ask the sailors themselves, and you'll get a different perspective than you might expect. Senior Chief Thompson reflects on his 15 years of carrier service. It's really not that bad once you adjust to it. People always ask me, how do you live on a ship for months? And I tell them honestly, you adapt faster than you think. Yeah, the space is tight. Yeah, you miss home. But you've also got this incredible sense of purpose. You're part of something bigger than yourself. And the friendships you make out here, the bonds with your shipmates, those last a lifetime. My kids think it's cool that their dad works on an aircraft carrier. My wife worries, of course, but she also understands this is important work. Petty Officer Second Class Jennifer Wu, an aviation electrician, shares a different angle. The biggest misconception is that life aboard ship is miserable, and everyone just counts the days until deployment ends. But honestly, there are moments of real beauty out here. I'll never forget standing on the flight deck at sunset in the middle of the Pacific, watching aircraft recover after training missions, and realizing I'm part of this incredible operation. Or the time we crossed the equator and had the whole shellback ceremony. The entire crew came together for this tradition that goes back centuries. Those are the memories I'll carry forever. Petty Officer Rodriguez adds his favorite sea story. We had this one night during workups, rough seas, and the ship was rolling pretty good. I'm in the galley helping prep midrats, and we're fighting to keep everything from sliding off the counters, right? And the culinary specialists are just laughing, joking with each other, completely unfazed. I asked one of them, "How do you deal with this?" And he said, "Brother, this is what we train for. This is where we prove we're the best." That attitude, that pride in doing difficult work and doing it well, that's what makes this crew special. The reality is that Hollywood gets it mostly wrong. Life on a carrier isn't constant combat and dramatic emergencies. It's routine, it's repetitive, it's often boring, but it's also meaningful. It's challenging, and it builds character and skills that sailors carry for the rest of their lives. The teamwork, the discipline, the ability to function under pressure, those qualities translate to success in any field. And at the end of the day, when the work is done and sailors file through the mess line for dinner, when they sit down with their shipmates and share a meal, when they talk and laugh and momentarily forget about the challenges they've faced or will face tomorrow, that's when you see the real strength of the USS Gerald R. Ford. Not in its weapon systems or its reactors or its advanced technology, but in the people who bring all of that to life. As Petty Officer Wu puts it, we're not just operating a ship. We're living proof that when people work together toward a common goal, when they support each other and take pride in their work, there's nothing we can't accomplish. That's what makes this experience special. Not the carrier itself, the people aboard it.